Okay, so now we are recording. So it's the first time we're doing it. And I'm Daniela, and you are?
Susana Borrelli from Argentina.
And I asked you to do some recordings together to talk about SoftRead, about reading, about what we do, maybe to talk about some cases that we had, to share experience, and whatever, comes to mind. And I wanted,
No problem.
and I want,
Fantastic.
and so first of all, thank you for agreeing to do it. And I wanted to ask you, how do you introduce yourself usually? If somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? What do you say? What do you answer?
Interesting question. Well, already I am a translator here in Argentina, and after graduating from the translator course, I decided that I would like to be a teacher. So I took up the kind of profesorado, the teacher's training course, or where I decided that I would be better working within the school frameworks rather than sitting in front of a computer doing translations and being on my own. And it
Correct.
was there
I
when
can identify with that.
yeah, well, actually, I spend lots of hours in front of my computer nowadays, but in those days, I found interesting that I was able to teach or at least approach students who had or showed at least some problems, especially in reading. They were the so-called struggling readers. And apparently, in those days, for me, it was easier to reach them than the normal ones, the standard students. And so, little by little, I was starting to discover that we shared some characteristics in common. In those days, I didn't know that I was dyslexic. I knew that I had some problems with reading, and I knew that I found it difficult to sort of, you know, uh, do my written tasks. I always had problems whenever I had to approach a literary device. It was difficult, but I managed, and somehow I had compensated
Of
those
course.
difficulties.
Wait, so I
Even
want.
though I had a terrible experience at school. I mean, primary school, secondary school. When I started university, for me it was terrible at the beginning. But even so, I somehow succeeded. I was sort of blessed because I always had around people who sort of, accompanied me. I had this skill that nowadays I know that this is the skill for dyslexics, which was collaborate. I mean, I knew that how to collaborate with others and at the same time negotiate whatever I needed. I would sort of offer some of my strengths, and in return they would sort of give them they would give me whatever I needed to sort of, I don't know, fulfill a task or
So,
something.
so
And
you
so
were
little by little,
a trader.
a sort of trader, yes. I mean, that started from the very beginning at secondary school. Nowadays, I still have my friends from school, and they sort of remember those days and say, "Well, you were always doing business." I mean, as regards schooling.
That's
And university, I had a bad time, as well as I told you, very hard, because being a translator requires lots
a lot
of
of
reading
reading. Yeah,
and
sure.
lots of, whatever has to do with language. I was supposed to be a communicator, but in another language, to start with. Well, I dropped out in second year and I went to England where I spent a couple of years. And I had the gift, I would say, I received a gift because I came across a lot of people who sort of started telling me that I had some problems with the learning skills. And I started working very slowly on how to approach reading from a different perspective. That was listening to audiobooks, I don't know, watching movies or reading. I mean, for the sake of scanning the texts. And once I sort of had a general idea, I would go into details whenever I needed some information from the text. So I came back to Argentina, I graduated, then as I told you before, I took up the teaching training course, and there was still something that was missing because I didn't have a label. I didn't know who I was indeed. I
Ah,
always was the problem teacher because I wasn't able to cope. To deal with the curriculums. I remember heads telling me, "Well, okay, you are supposed to carry out the curricula, filling in, all the paperwork," and I was unable to do that. I always needed a kind of secretary to sort of help me with the corrections, to help me with the pedagogy, the curriculums, etc. After a couple of years, my daughter was diagnosed with dyslexia at a very early age. She was 4 at that time. And so I said, why not trying out a diagnosis myself? Maybe.
and only then,
I
only
mean,
then.
yeah, because actually we did share some characteristics, even though she's adopted. I mean, it's incredible. That was the second gift that I had in my life. And well, after that diagnosis, I came across the name and surname. I'm dyslexic, phonological dyslexic, and well, also dyscalculia, which has to do with numbers, not only with, numbers in terms of sums, lateralization, problems with sequencing, and
Right.
many other things that now today I know why I was at that time, say, so good teaching my students with the same problems because I knew how to approach them
You
because
need
that
how to
was the same way
reach.
I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew how to do it, not because I was uh, a proficient on the field of teaching in those days, but just because I was somehow I had experienced my own trail and I was able to sort of go on the same way with them, and it worked. But still, I needed some, scientific grounds, I would say.